Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good morning to everyone. It is 10 a.m. and that is why we are back live with yet another edition of the Hindu Newspaper Analysis. Good morning once again. I welcome you all, especially those who have joined in on time. As you know, every morning sharp at 10 a.m. we begin analyzing the day's Hindu newspaper, take out the most important news stories and try to dissect that, try to see what is relevant from the examination point of view. There's also one other very important announcement. For the past few days, ever since the economic survey and the budget have been released, there has been a lot of demand and also request from the side of the students to bring us the sessions for economic survey. So your demand has been heard now. For the next 2 weeks, as you know, every Friday at 8 p.m. we usually have the explained session. So what we'll do is this Friday, that is today evening, and the next Friday, these 2 Fridays will be the economic survey sessions for you. So make sure that you attend these sessions. As I told you, these will be in place of the explained sessions for the 2 weeks, today and the next Friday. That is 10th and 17th of February, where Shamsa will be discussing in detail what is it that the economic survey says. As you know, economic survey by far is the most authentic source of data about the government. Now, let's begin. Let's see what are the important articles that we have for you today. The first article that we have taken up is again something related to the budget. So far, and we have discussed, we have in fact taken up a lot of articles on the budget. We have discussed about how the budget has been focusing on green energy push. We have been focusing on how the budget has cut down certain expenditure in the form of subsidies, how the government has even cut down expenditure on Manrega and other schemes as well. This article in the Hindu newspaper says the budget is not really as good as we are thinking. In simple terms, the author here is actually giving a pessimistic view of the budget. Pessimistic view of the budget means the author is saying despite all these announcements, despite the government increasing capital expenditure, despite the government cutting down on certain subsidies, we are still a long way away from where we need to be. The author says that Indian government's aim of reaching a $5 trillion GDP mark by 2024-25 is anyways out of the question. If you remember, the Prime Minister of the country in 2019 said that we will try and become a $5 trillion economy by 2024-25. However, because of the pandemic, because of the lockdown, everyone thinks that no, this is not possible now. The author is making a point that even if the pandemic would not have come, even then we were never on our course to achieve the $5 trillion mark. He says that despite a lot of announcements, there are still big problems in the economy. I'll tell you in very simple terms what the big problem is. The one big problem in the economy, and you can say in one single phrase, that is jobless growth. If you remember, a few months back, Raghuram Rajan, the former RBI governor, had said in an interview that India is going through a phase of jobless growth. Now, what is a jobless growth? Jobless growth means when you look at the overall numbers, overall economy, how is it that the GDP is increasing, you will see there's a constant increase in the GDP. However, that does not translate into good job numbers. The unemployment rate at the same time remains high, although we do see the GDP. Now, how is that possible? How is it possible that the GDP is increasing, but even then we see that the unemployment numbers are still the same? The reason for this and why this happens is when you have unequal growth. When you have unequal growth. Let's try and take a very simple example. Okay? Let's take a very simple example. Let us assume I say that today, again, just take an example. Let us assume that today, India's per capita income is $2,100. Okay? Let's assume that India's per capita income is $2,100. Now, what happens after 10 years is, let's assume every one of us still has the same income after 10 years, but Mr. Ambani, his income has grown 10 times. Only Mr. Ambani's income has grown 10 times. All our income is the same. So after 10 years, if you calculate the average income would increase, right? Because the average income means average of everyone. But is it helping everyone? Not really. It is helping only one single person who has increased his income. That is called unequal growth. This is what is happening in India. The GDP is increasing because some people are earning more, some people's business has become better, but overall the situation is not improving, and that is why we still see high unemployment in the country. That is what the author is pointing towards. The unemployment problem has still not been solved. Now there are two ways to look at it. One way, as per the author says you can be very happy that, oh, we will reach the $5 trillion mark. You can be also happy that now, see, we are such a big economy. We overtook UK also to become the 5th largest economy in the world. That is a cause for celebration, right? You can celebrate if you want. There are so many reports that say that by 2047 we will become such a big economy. By 2037 we will become such a big economy. So either you can be happy with just those numbers that, oh, what will happen in 2037? I can't wait. But the reality also should not be taken away from us. The reality again in this situation is that unemployment numbers are still not going down. Now the author says that in India's progress, the Western countries also have an interest. US, European countries also want India to progress for various reasons. Number one, India actually is a very good place for investment for these countries. See, European countries, US, etc., they have a lot of extra money. So they want to invest that money. Like, as a common man, if I have extra money, what do? I put it in the bank to earn some rate of interest, right? Or I invested in the mutual fund so that I can get some interest. Those who are too energetic, those who are too risk-taking, they buy bitcoins to earn interest, right? But at the end of the day, anyone who has more money, anyone who has some extra money wants to invest so that your money can increase, right? The same is the case with the governments also. The governments also want to invest the money to increase their income. What do the governments do? Governments look for different markets where they can earn good interest. India in that case presents a good opportunity for the Western countries. A lot of Western countries invest a lot of money in the Indian market. So for them it is important that the Indian market actually grows, number one. Second, for the Western countries, India is a similar kind of a country because India follows a democratic model of government. While the Western countries might have good trade with China, but their values are not the same. On the other hand, India gives same kind of values that the Western countries have. And that is why the Western countries also want India to go ahead and grow at a fast pace. But that cannot happen unless we solve the problem of unemployment that we are facing with. And these are government numbers themselves. The author says if you look at the government numbers, unemployment amongst urban males was higher than what it was a decade ago. So unemployment is only increasing. And that is why you see, because of unemployment, people are not earning a lot of money. When they are not earning a lot of money, they are not spending a lot of money. When people don't spend a lot of money, at the end of the day, we will have a slowdown in the economy. The author says that the current growth that we are seeing is because in the pandemic years, we came so down that obviously in the next 2-3 years, you will see a growth. But after that, you will see the growth will stagnate because we are not giving enough employment. The one good thing that the government is doing is that the government is focusing a lot on capital expenditure. We have discussed about capital expenditure earlier as well. Capital expenditure means expenditure made to build infrastructure, to build bridges, highways, roads, railway stations, airports, so that more and more jobs can be given. This is one way in which the government is hoping that we can actually go ahead. But giving a push to infrastructure has its own negative points as well. You saw what happened in Joshimath. You see what happens in Himachal Pradesh, in Uttarakhand. We have so many regular landslides now. We have Problems such as the floods coming in because the concrete jungle has been created. We see how the rainwater, even when we have a couple of hours of rain, we have such bad situation that people are stuck. So infrastructure and development is also coming at a cost, and that is what the government must realize. So the author says, blindly just building infrastructure also will not be in our interest. It would be much, much better if rather than that, we find out a sustainable development way to give more jobs to our youth, because that cannot be a way forward. Now, there is a very common question that UPSC asks time and time again. That common question is, why is it that unemployment in India still remains a big problem? See, there are many, many issues because of which we still battle with the problem of unemployment. The one big problem is lack of skills. You all know, in most of the colleges, universities in India, you might get a degree after 3 years or 4 years. But in most cases, you do not get the kind of skills that are required to land you a good job. When the companies usually go to campuses, have campus placement, the companies then train those students for what they have to do, and then they start the job. There are very few education institutions in India that are actually giving the skills that are required. That is also a big, big, big problem in India. That also has to be filled. Now, the government is looking at that. The government has started a lot of skill development projects. In this year's budget, the government announced a push towards 5G, AI also, hoping that that would give the required skills for the people. But that cannot change overnight. We still have problems where a lot of social factors are considered. See, not in multinational organizations, but if you look at small businesses, when you employ people, people still look at what is your caste, what is your religion, should I give you a job, should I not give you a job? You might say, no, this doesn't happen now. But if you look at the reality in small cities and villages, social factors still play a big role in who do you employ, who do you not employ. The increasing rate of population, agriculture still being a dominant factor, and that is why not many people getting the kind of skills that they require for high-tech jobs. All of that is a problem because of which India, despite having an advantage in terms of demographic dividend, despite having a lot of young people who can contribute to the workforce, is not being able to provide as many jobs as it should ideally. If you look at this graph, you will see how the unemployment rate in India is not really going down. If you see this unemployment rate, July again 7.5, it was basically for 2020, but the same pattern has gone even today. If you look at the pattern of unemployment rate, that has not gone down, although the government has started a lot of skills. But there is one other side of the story that we have to understand. A lot of people say that government should provide more jobs, right? We see so many protests from the people, government vacancies should be more. But at the end of the day, understand, no country can be successful if they just depend on the government to provide jobs. The government can provide an environment where more jobs are created. But at the end of the day, it cannot be the job of the government only to provide you jobs. The government should provide such an atmosphere where more companies are set up, where it is easier to do business so that the jobs can be created. But at the end of the day, you cannot expect the government only to provide all those jobs, because when you have more people employed by the government, you have a red tape, you have a burden on the government, you have burden on the government in the form of pension also. So the ideal situation is not that the government should give more jobs. The ideal situation is government should provide an environment where more jobs are created. This was the first important article. Before I go on to the second one, let me see if there are a few questions I'll take quickly. Those who are asking about disinvestment, and I think someone also told them, we had a very detailed discussion on disinvestment in yesterday's session of the Hindu Newspaper Analysis. I would suggest you to go through the yesterday's session so that you can actually learn about disinvestment, whatever you want, you can see from there. So let's not repeat that. Okay, I'll take one more question. Infrastructure, when it comes to investment, comes when infrastructure is good. See, there are two ways. for building infrastructure, you obviously require investment. But then at the end of the day, when you're building infrastructure, are you building it at the cost of nature? Because if you're building infrastructure, for example, if you're cutting down forests, just building infrastructure, thinking that you will set up more factories, people will get more jobs. The problem here is at the end of the day, you are harming your own environment in the long run. See what happened in Joshimath, see the flash floods that we have. So infrastructure push is important, but it cannot come at the cost of nature. Okay, then I'll take one more question. How do they provide environment for creating jobs? So when I say government should provide environment for creating jobs, what we really mean to say is government should ensure that doing business in India is easier. If let's say someone has to start their company, their factory, it should be easy for them to take permissions. The process should not be very complicated. Government should act as a facilitator rather than putting hurdles in between. All these kind of things. Then many people, I don't know why people don't know what is red tape. Red tape means when there are bureaucratic hurdles. Let's say you want to take government permission, they will give you 100 of forms to sign and they'll say you go here, go there, take that permission, bring that document. That is red tape. Red tape means when you put bureaucratic hurdles, making it difficult to actually get some permission from the government, that is called red tape. Perfect. The second important writer that we want to discuss is about India-France partnership. Now, we have discussed this earlier as well, if you remember one of the CNAs where we discussed that India and France have had a very robust relationship. There have been multiple articles written on it. We usually think that France, yes, we did take the Rafale jets from France, but because we have a very short memory, we forget the fact that our relationship and collaboration with France is very, very old. Since the 1960s, France has been a supplier of many weapons to India. India-France relationship goes a long, long way back. It is one of those Western countries that has always supported whenever India wanted a membership of a new group. Even today, France supports India's membership claim to the United Nations Security Council. France also supports India's bid to become a member of the NSG, that is the Nuclear Suppliers Group. That is why we need to understand that France has a very, very important role to play in India's foreign policy. Now, having said that, we also have to understand that there are some issues in India-France partnership as well. We'll discuss those issues in just a bit. Now, if we actually see France and India, it is not just about buying and selling of weapons. Understand something. When India goes ahead and buys weapon from a country, India wants technology transfer. India wants technology transfer. Now, what do you mean? For example, let's assume India goes ahead and buys certain aeroplanes from a country. India says, apart from buying this, please also tell us how did you make it. Please tell us the technology behind it. Why? So that in the future, if we have to change something in this, in the future, if we have to make our own planes, we should be able to do this. Usually, countries don't agree to this. For example, whenever we buy any weapon from US will never do any technology transfer, never. They say, no, whatever you have to buy, tell us and we will supply you. We will not tell you how we made it. France is an exception in that case. France, for example, in 2005, we told France we want to buy submarines with technology transfer. They said, okay, no problem. We will tell you the technology to make submarines. That is why France Scorpion conventional submarines with their French technology were built in India itself with the transfer of technology. When you have a country which is ready to transfer technology, that becomes a very, very, very important partnership. This is what France has been helping with when it comes to India. Even before Rafale, we have had many collaborations. Even in the private sector also, many French companies have actually come in and made certain collaboration with Indian companies as well. For example, you all would have seen in the news a few months back, Tata Group has tied up with Airbus to manufacture C-295 transport aircraft. So that will also come from France only. That is why the France-India relationship is very, very healthy. Now, the author is saying that France and India have one other thing in common, that is our maritime partnership. Maritime partnership. Please understand this. In today's time, in the 21st century, maritime partnership is extremely important. Why is that so? The entire world is connected so much right now. We are dependent on importing a lot of things from other countries, and we also export a lot of things to other countries. Bulk of the global trade, when you have to send something from your country to the other, the bulk of global trade only happens through water. You cannot send these heavy things in large quantity by air. Ultimately, if India has to supply something to, let's say, US or Europe, mostly it will supply through water only. And this is why having freedom of navigation, ensuring that there's no country that is dominating the world sea, that is extremely important. And that is why the countries usually try to make partnership with other countries in other parts of the world. For example, the purpose of France will be that if, let's say, there's a ship that is going to France, or there's a ship that is coming from France, nearby India it faces some problems, then France should be able to call India and say, see, this ship is facing some problem, can you please help them out? These are the kind of partnerships that the countries actually look for. Because in today's time, as I told you, the entire world is dependent on global trade. So it is important that you form as many maritime partnerships as possible. I hope all of you know, with US also, India has a similar kind of partnership. In fact, this is your homework for today. When the session ends, tell me in the comment section, what is the name of that agreement that India has with US? Similar kind of agreement, that if a US ship is nearby India, if they have some problem, India will help them. If an Indian ship is nearby USA, if they have some problem, they will help them. There are many agreements that we have made with US as well. Do tell me in the comment section after the video ends, not right now. Now, the reason why this article has been written specifically is because India and France have completed 25 years of strategic partnership. The strategic partnership agreement was signed in 1998. For the last 25 years, the relationship has only grown from strength to strength. Remember, we just discussed a few days back, India, France and UAE. These three countries have also signed an agreement to ensure maritime awareness, to ensure maritime security. You will see increasing number of countries trying to sign a maritime security agreement with other countries to ensure safety of their vessels, to make sure that their ships, etc. are not attacked. One other very important thing is India and France are very few countries in the world right now that are still talking to both sides in the Russia-Ukraine war. France from the very beginning has been trying to play a role of a mediator between Ukraine and Russia. Similarly, India also is right now at least in talks or in talking terms on both the sides. That also presents a great opportunity for the world when the world looks towards those nations that can play the role of a mediator. There are not many countries that have equally good terms right now with Ukraine and Russia. Having said that, as I told you earlier as well, there are some issues in India-France partnership even today. It's not all hunky-dory. First, let's look at the trade right now. Yes, India-France have a good trade, but again, whenever you look at India's trade with some country and see it's a good number, always try and compare that country's trade with China. Here I have numbers of 2020 from you. The numbers have not really changed a lot. In 2020, India's exports to France were about $4.5 billion. France exports to India were about $4.8 billion. So in 2020, if I round it off, you can say the trade of India-France was $10 billion. If I round it off. Let's look at France-China trade in 2020 itself. Chinese exports to France, $39 billion. France exports to China, $19.5 billion. Again, if you round it off, once again, it will be close to, let's say, $60 billion of trade between France and China in 2020. Just see the proportion. Yes, India-France trade is good, but when it comes to numbers between France and China, that is a much, much higher number. So there is still a lot of scope for improvement in that case. There are many other problems because of which India-France relationship could have gone much better, but it has not. For example, there are many projects that France has initiated in India that have not been completed. For example, there is the Jaitapur nuclear project that is stalled. It is facing a lot of criticism. Whenever any government in India especially wants to set up, let's say, the nuclear power plants or wants to set up dams, etc., for that you require a lot of land from the people. Acquiring land is a major concern. Then setting up nuclear power plant would also see certain objections because people think it is not safe. So the Jaitapur nuclear project has been stalled because of all these objections. Second, we have still not been able to sign a free trade agreement with EU. France, as you know, is a prominent member of European Union. Despite all these attempts, we have still not been able to finalize a free trade agreement with the EU, because of which the trade numbers from France could have gone much higher, but they have not. In terms of what is happening in Ukraine and Russia, yes, India has not faced any sanctions. We are still continuing to buying oil and gas from Russia, but France does not really appreciate it. France has said or told India many times that you should control the trade, but that is also not happening. And even the bilateral ties with France in terms of trade numbers are not the best in entire Europe. If you look at Germany, for example, with Germany we have better trade as compared to France. So there are still some issues, some challenges in India-France relationship, but the good part is the two sides have not really had any specific disagreement in the past few years. There have never been any issue where the two sides have come face to face with each other that we don't like you, I will not talk. We have usually always been on good terms with each other, and that is why the relationship is still going strong. The next article is again from the frame of international relations only. This time around, this article is focusing on the role of China in the Ukraine-Russia war. Now it's very interesting if you look at what China is doing in the Ukraine-Russia war. See, when the Ukraine-Russia war started, no one, even Russia, did not think that the war will go on for so long. We are now about to complete 1 year of the war. The war is still continuing. We have still not seen any ceasefire. We have still not seen any talks. The war is still continuing. Everyone thought it will be a short war. So when the war began, many countries started to take their side. As expected, when the war began, China said that no, we are, although they never openly said it, but China was on the side of Russia only. China and Russia have improved their relationship in the past few years. They have in fact become so close that they have given statement that our relationship was never better in the history. Our relationship is all-weather friends, etc. And this is very funny. Very funny because if you look at the history of Russia and China, it's a very interesting history. Russia and China were two major communist countries in the world. And they were always not openly fighting, but they were always face to face with each other because both of them wanted to be called the real communist country leader. Like when the world was divided into two parts in the Cold War, USA on one hand was a capitalist leader of the world. Everyone knew this. But who will be the communist leader? China said we are the real communist country. Russia, USSR said we are the real communist country. So although they were both following the same kind of ideology, but at the end of the day, they were never so close to each other. But now because they have found a common, I won't say enemy, but a common adversary in US, they have now come close. The difference now is earlier, Russia used to be the big brother, China used to be the younger brother. Now the roles have changed. Now China plays the role of the big brother, Russia plays the role of a younger brother, although don't tell this to Vladimir Putin, he will not like it, but this is the reality. China right now plays the role of a bigger brother. So what happened was when the war began, China was seen as someone who was focusing or who was supporting Russia. But what has happened is as the war has gone on and on and on, we are seeing a very interesting change in China's policy. What is that interesting change? China is now becoming more neutral. Rather than going and giving or taking side of Russia, China is becoming more neutral. Earlier, ever since the war has gone on, you will see whenever any resolution was introduced against Russia in UN, China either voted against it or China did not vote. But now the things are changing. Why is it so? Why is it that China now wants to actually become properly neutral and not take side of Russia? Understand this from China's point of view for one moment. See, if you look at Chinese economy right now is not going through a very good phase. The COVID-19 has hit China very badly in the past few months. They have been very strict with the lockdowns. So the economic progress that they were hoping for has not happened. So China right now is also in a lot of economic trouble. Chinese economy, as you know, mainly depends on its manufacturing. China wants to export a lot of stuff. Mainly their exports go to Europe, they go to USA, etc. China has started to realize if they partner with Russia openly, then their exports will be hurt. And it is happening. Many countries have openly spoken against China, which was not the case earlier. Canada has openly spoken against China. UK, the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak openly spoke against China. France itself openly speaking against China. That was not the case earlier. China earlier thought that these countries will depend on our product, they will never speak against us. But now China is realizing that these Western countries are speaking against us. We cannot let our trade get impacted because of the Ukraine-Russia war. Because ultimately China has to understand, or China understands, that their entire economic progress depends on sending a lot of products, selling a lot of products to these countries. That is why they are becoming more neutral. It's not that they are becoming anti-Russia, but they are becoming more neutral. And they are also taking advantage of the cheap Russian oil. We see a lot of news stories that India is buying cheap Russian oil, India should not buy that, all of those things. But I will just show you the numbers and you will see China is buying more cheap Russian oil than India. China, in fact, is a very, very, very large buyer of Russian oil. Earlier, Saudi Arabia used to be the biggest supplier of oil to China. Now it is Russia. China is also trying to help Russia from backdoor. For example, many Chinese companies are sending certain equipment to Russia like navigation weapons, etc. But China is playing it very, very, very closely. China does not want the Western world to know that we are supporting Russia. China is saying, no, we are neutral because, as I told you, China does not want its exports to get harmed because their entire country depends on the exports. There is one other interesting side of the story that people don't really discuss. China also has good relationship with Ukraine. See, we ignore the fact, but Ukraine also has a very solid defense industry. Ukraine was a part of USSR. They also had very good manufacturing base of weapons. In fact, China had actually taken Ukraine's aircraft carrier. China's first aircraft carrier, they had bought it from Ukraine, the old one. So all of these things China now has to consider, and China is slowly changing its stand and they are now becoming properly neutral. There is a phrase here, and someone has asked in the chat also, there is a phrase in this article that says pro-Russia neutrality. China is displaying pro-Russia neutrality, meaning that China is saying we are neutral, but in reality they are pro-Russia. For example, and I'll equate that to India as well. When we, in the time of the Cold War going on, India always said we are a non-aligned country. We are not in any of the two sides. But everyone knew if it comes to choose between the two, we will go towards Soviet Union only, right? India said we are a non-aligned country, we are not in any camp, but the reality was at the end of the day, we were buying weapons from Soviet Union. Soviet Union was the one that was helping us. So India's position at that time could be called as pro-USSR neutrality. Similarly with China, it is pro-Russian neutrality. So they are neutral, but they are right now a bit towards Russia. Now, a couple of things here. Would it impact India if China and Russia come very close? In simple terms, yes. It would impact India if China and Russia come very close. See, Russia by far has been India's oldest and the most dependable friend. Russia has held India whenever we wanted, whenever we required. But now if Russia and China come very close, that might put our position in trouble. Whenever it comes to any resolution in the UNSC, we expect Russia to help us and China usually goes against us. If these two countries come very close, it might have certain issues. Economic alliance can also be a problem if China and Russia come very close. It might impact India's trade with Russia as well. It might now happen that China might supplying these kind of things to Russia. Militarily also, we are dependent a lot on Russia. We don't buy a lot of new weapons from Russia, but still spare parts and repairs of our old Russian weapons have to happen. So Chinese impact and growing closeness of China with Russia might have a big problem for India. So India also has to be concerned about that. Now, as I told you earlier, I'll show you how we ignore the fact that it is not just India that is buying Russian oil. China, in fact, is buying much more Russian oil as compared to India. Look at these numbers. This graph shows you how many million barrels per day of oil is being imported from Russia. Till November 2022, if India was at 0.9, China was at 1 million barrel per day. Again, more as compared to India. Not just this, look at this. This was a time when the Ukraine-Russia war started. And after this, see what China has been doing. China has been increasing its energy buys from Russia. See, in every crisis, there is an opportunity. Remember this. If there is a crisis between Ukraine and Russia, China thinks, oh, there is an opportunity. Let me buy Russian oil, Russian gas at cheap prices. Let us do this. So this opportunity that we actually have, China also realizes that although India is only buying oil, we don't really buy a lot of gas from Russia, we only buy oil. But if you look at China, they are buying gas as well in very large numbers from Russia. While the world over, the other nations can lecture us, they can lecture India, do not buy Russian oil, you are doing a bad thing. None of them have the courage to actually lecture China. Because they know, no, China obviously will go ahead, China will not listen to anyone, but all of them have the courage to lecture India when both the countries are doing the exact same thing. The next article that we have here is about a tribal community from the northeast part of India called the Brus tribe, also known as the Rayang tribe. Now, what is the issue between the Brus-Rayang tribe? Let's try and understand. Not very difficult. So basically, there has been a problem of the Brus tribe in between the two states, Tripura and Mizoram. Let's understand what is the issue. See, whenever we read about the northeastern part of India, there is one big mistake that all of us commit. That mistake is, we think or we very simply say that, oh, that is a tribal region. But what we don't understand is, even among the northeastern states, there are a lot of very diverse tribes that live. Not all the tribes are the same as each other. All the tribes have a different past. All the tribes have a different culture. Many tribes do not want the other tribes to live in their areas. This is where the problem of the Brus tribe starts. So what happened was, a few years back, the Brus tribe was attacked in Mizoram. A lot of people from the Brus tribe, so it is said that Brus tribe originally belongs to Tripura. They originally belonged to Tripura, but a lot of them had settled in Mizoram. What happened was, there were clashes a few years back, and a lot of the Brus tribe people were killed in Mizoram. Now the central government came in between. Mizoram government said, or Mizoram local tribe said, we don't want these people here, take them back to Tripura. Now this is where the problem starts. As I told you, because they originally belonged to Tripura but they were living in Mizoram for some time, what happened was, there was a demand that the tribal people of the Brus community should be settled back to Tripura only. And this is where the problem starts. The central government came in between. Central government said, okay, we will have a peaceful settlement. We will try and settle the Bru tribe back. First, they decided to settle the Bru tribe in Mizoram only. Again, please do have this clarity. The Bru tribe originally are from Tripura, but they were settled, many of them were settled in Mizoram. Mizoram did not like them, Mizoram did not want them to be in their state, so they started attacking them. Okay, that is clear. Central government came in between. Central government said, okay, we will come and we will settle you in Mizoram itself, don't worry. But these tribals said, no, we don't want to be in Mizoram. Why? Because our life is in danger. We don't want to be in Mizoram. We will be killed. We will be attacked. So finally, there was a compromise formula. What was the compromise formula? The compromise formula was between Mizoram government, Tripura, between the government of India and the leaders of the Bru tribe, so Bru tribe representatives. This was a compromise formula that was struck. Now what was the compromise formula? The compromise was, we will settle them in Tripura only. They would be settled in Tripura, and the government of India will also help them. How? The government of India will give them agricultural land so that they can settle. The government of India will also give them some money to build their own house, and the government of India will also help them in getting a job. These kind of things the government of India promised. Now, what is the problem here? The problem here is, despite that agreement, the agreement very clearly said that the Bru tribes will be held, they will be settled in Tripura, where they would not have any danger to their life. They would be given land, they would be given money to make their own house, and most importantly, they would also be included in the voter list. That was the most important promise made. The important promise was that they will be included in the voter list of Tripura. This promise particularly is not being fulfilled, and that is why this article has been written. If you see here, they actually have to be in the voter list as per the promise made, but out of the 40,000 Bru tribe people who have been settled in Tripura, when they are now going to the authorities to ask for their voter ID cards, they are having a lot of difficulty. Why? Because officials are asking them for their documents. They don't have any documents to show. Because understand this, when you run away from some country or from some state to save your life, you would not really carry a lot of documents. If your life is in danger, you will run to just save your life. You will not carry a lot of documents. So a lot of Bru tribe people who are now settled in Tripura, since they don't have any documents to show, they did not take any documents from Mizoram state, they are still not getting a place in the voter list. And this voter list problem still remains an issue. That is why they are again requesting the government of India, they are again requesting the Home Ministry to come in the picture. Because on all these issues, see, whenever there is an issue between one state and the other state, it is the Home Ministry that will come into the picture. Whenever there is any issue between any border of the two states, whenever there is an issue where certain community of people are being discriminated against, it is the responsibility of the Home Ministry to maintain internal order in the state. And that is why the Home Ministry is being requested again to look into this matter to actually ensure that there is a peaceful settlement. The good part is that if you look at the northeast part of India, a lot of these states still have border related issues. The reason why they have border related issues is, if you go back a few decades, almost entire northeast was one state, that is Assam. Most of the northeastern states are carved out of Assam only, and that is why many of them have a border issue also with Assam. Thankfully, the good part is a lot of northeastern states have the same political party in the power as we have at the center government. So that has given a lot of belief to the people in the northeast that these issues might be resolved, but it has not happened so far. I see someone asking, why did they migrate to Mizoram? So basically, this migration happens for a lot of reasons. See, the tribal community is spread all across that area. For example, a lot of their family members might be settled somewhere else for job purposes. they might have some land available to them in across the border, so they keep on settling there. You go across the border not thinking that you will be killed, right? For example, if you have a better job in some other city today and you go there, you don't think that you will be killed there. You go there for better opportunities, as simple as that. But when obviously you are being attacked, then you would have to come back. Similar is the state there as well, for employment, for better opportunities, for better land, for all these things. Also, with the northeastern state, there is also one other problem that we ignore. I'll give you an example of Tripura. There has been a lot of population inversion that has happened in Tripura. Population inversion means, if you, let's say, go back about 50 years, 40 years in fact in Tripura, Tripura was mainly a tribal state. Majority of its population was tribal. But because so many people, first from East Pakistan, now from Bangladesh, because so many people from Bangladesh, from East Pakistan have come in to this part of the country, many of them settled in Tripura, that Tripura has now inverted its population pattern. Now tribals are in minority in Tripura. So a lot of these tribals, when they thought they don't have enough land available for them, would have migrated to the other side, to the other state. And this is where the problem actually starts. Yes, even Bru and Rayang are the same tribe, just known by different names. The next article is about the United States of America saying that they do not intend to put any sanctions on India. This is not a new news. This is just a confirmation or reaffirmation of what the US government has been saying time and time again. There are many countries right now that have been demanding in the western part of the world that there should be sanctions put on India. Why? Because India is buying a lot of Russian oil. India is still dealing with Russia. This should not have happened. They are all looking towards US to put sanctions on India, but that is not the case. US has repeatedly said India is too important a country for that. We will not put any sanctions. Also, US has said that our purpose was, that is what US is saying. US is saying that our purpose was that Russia should not earn a lot of money so that they cannot sponsor the war. The entire purpose of US was to control the earning of Russia, and they are successful in doing that. The reason being that India, even though we are buying Russian oil, we are not paying a very heavy price for that. Because we are buying Russian oil at a cheaper price, USA says that Russia is not being held by India, so we will not put any sanctions on India. The fact is that yes, India has increased its oil buying from Russia considerably. In fact, the very interesting number here is, if you look at how much oil did India used to buy from Russia before the invasion, before the Ukraine invasion that took place from Russia, of the total oil that we used to buy, only 0.2% used to come from Russia. And now that number has gone up to 28%. Just imagine. It is almost, in fact, even more than 100 times increase. It is more than 100 times increase. From 0.2% to 28% of our oil is coming from Russia, because as our external minister has also said time and time again, India has to look towards its own national interest first and then towards some other country. Now, there is one other very interesting thing that is going around in international media, and I want to discuss that also. There are a lot of news articles that say that there is something very interesting happening here. Europe is still buying oil of Russia, just that they are not buying it from Russia. So what is happening right now is Russia is selling its oil to China and selling its oil to India. Now India, as you know, and China also, have some of the biggest oil refineries in the world. The Jamnagar oil refinery, the Reliance refinery that we have, is the biggest in the world. So what we are doing is, we are buying this crude oil from Russia, we are then refining it, and we are sending the same oil to Europe. We are actually selling this oil to Europe. So many people are saying actually what is happening is Europe is still buying Russian oil, just that it is going through China and it is going through India. So India and China are being used as a backdoor entry for Russian oil to go to Europe. Officially, we do not accept that. Officially, the European countries also don't accept that. The European countries say, no, 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 that is not happening. We are not buying any Russian oil. We also say, no, 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 that is not what's happening. But you have to understand, in international diplomacy, there is a lot more happening at the background behind the curtain than what actually is published in the media. At the international level, when the leaders meet, when they discuss things, there are a lot of things that happen which never are known to the common people. So it would not be very odd to think that the same oil is still going to Europe just as it's going through our refineries. So we are also earning in between. That is what is happening right now. These are the important articles that we had for you from the Hindu newspaper of today. There are a couple of important questions I would like all of you to write answers to. Number one, growing closeness between Russia and China may have a significant impact on India. Comment. Second, despite impressive growth numbers, employment hasn't risen with the same speed in India. Discuss reasons for such lacunas. Try and write the answers here as well. As I told you, tonight at 8 p.m. in place of the explained session, we will have a discussion on the economic survey. The part 2 of the discussion will be on next Friday, so don't forget to join us for that as well. Also, if you have still not subscribed to our channel, I don't know what are you waiting for. So please hit the subscribe button. Please do leave the comments as you always do. We go through all your comments one by one. We will be back tomorrow 10 a.m. for the next newspaper discussion. Have a good day ahead. Jai Hind.